Stand-up coasters originally came into the industry, got very popular. Many of them were built over the course of about 20 years, but then, just as quickly as they became popular, they dwindled in popularity and became an irrelevant model. There has not been a stand-up coaster built in 20 years at this point. In the first episode of this new series, Whatever Happened To, I'm going to be taking a look at the stand-up roller coaster model and give my thoughts on why I think it got so popular and why I think it might have dwindled in popularity and whether I think there could be any more stand-up coasters being built in the future. Let's discuss the stand-up coaster. The first few stand-up coasters were actually originally built as sit-down coasters. There was the Mamanga Standing and Loop coaster at Yamariland in Tokyo, and also Dangai at Thrill Valley Amusement Park in Gotemba, Shizuoka, Japan. Both of these rides would add stand-up trains in 1982. In the United States, there was a standard aerodynamics corkscrew model built at Worlds of Fun in Kansas City, Missouri. It opened in 1976, and it was called Scream Roller. For the 1983 season, the name was changed to EXT, or Extreme Roller, and there were stand-up trains added to it. After only a couple years or so, these stand-up trains were removed. It turned out to be quite a mechanical disaster, as you could imagine, but these rides gave way to the stand-up coasters we know today and essentially acted as prototypes. The Japanese manufacturer Togo would continue their experimentation with stand-up coasters and would open the first built as a stand-up coaster in 1984. King Cobra opened at Mason, Ohio's Kings Island in April of 1984. This featured a simple layout with a few bunny hills, a helix, and one single inverting loop. Most of the stand-up coasters that would come to be manufactured by Togo would feature a single vertical loop, with a few exceptions not having any inversions at all. Most of these were very similar. A couple even had the same layout. The last Togo stand-up coaster to be built from the ground up opened in 1992. Many of these have been relocated or have closed down since they opened up, and they certainly leave a lot to be desired. The next company to join in on the stand-up craze would be the now world-renowned Intamin. Intamin opened their first stand-up coaster at Six Flags Magic Mountain in 1986, and it was called Shockwave. Only 3 of these Intamin stand-up coasters were ever built, and there's currently only one left operating, which is Shockwave, yes, another Shockwave, at Drayton Manor, which opened in 1994. These Intamin stand-up coasters had the same track design as the standard B&M track, as the founders of B&M were working with Intamin at the time. Obviously, the other company we have to talk about in the emergence of stand-up coasters is Bolliger and Mabillard, also known as B&M. Bolliger and Mabillard's first ever coaster was actually a stand-up. It was known as Iron Wolf, and it opened up at Six Flags Great America in Gurnee, Illinois in April of 1990. Unlike the Togo stand-up coasters, Iron Wolf featured a little bit of a variation in the typical stand-up coaster layout. It was much more twisted. It featured a corkscrew in addition to a standard loop. It was very small, only stood at 100 feet tall, and reached a speed of 55 miles per hour. And this certainly helped to lay the foundation for the great company that Bolliger and Mabillard would become in the future, and helped to spur the popularity of the stand-up coaster, as these B&M coasters were able to do a lot more than the Togo model had presented. Iron Wolf would be relocated to Six Flags America in 2012, and it would be renamed Apocalypse. But in 2018, Six Flags announced that they would be hopping onto the current trend of converting these old stand-up coasters into floorless coasters, and it will be renamed Firebird for the 2019 season. A couple other B&M stand-up coasters in recent years have received this treatment. namely Mantis at Cedar Point, which was the first B&M stand-up coaster to receive this treatment, reopened in the 2015 season as Rougarou and featured brand new floorless trains, obviously a new name, and a brand new color scheme. Cedar Fair would continue this with the renaming and floorless conversion of the old Vortex into Patriot at California's Great America in Santa Clara, California. This also received a brand new color scheme and was obviously marketed as a new ride. And this started to get people thinking what stand-up coasters would also receive this treatment in the future. As of currently, the other stand-up coaster in the Cedar Fair chain, Vortex at Carowinds, has not received this treatment, but I think it's a pretty safe bet that this could happen in the coming years. B&M stand-up coasters were in very high demand throughout all of the 90s. 7 of these stand-up coasters would be built over the course of 9 years, and they were very popular, created a lot of draw, which is why many big parks would order them. But all of a sudden, after 1999, they just kind of fell off and no more would be built. The last stand-up coaster to ever be built would be Georgia Scorcher at Six Flags Over Georgia, which opened in May of 1999. No other coasters would receive stand-up trains, and no more stand-up coasters would be constructed from the ground up. This brings us into our next topic of discussion: why stand-up coasters got so popular. I believe stand-up coasters got so popular because of the, for lack of a better word, gimmick of being able to stand up on a coaster. Obviously, you typically sit down, and a lot of people would rather sit down on a coaster, I think, which will bring me to my next point. But before we get there, the gimmick of standing up just seems more thrilling, and it did produce a really intense ride, and is a much different experience than the typical sit-down train. When B&M came into the picture, they were able to be a lot more flexible and add a lot of unique elements. And being that their first coaster was a stand-up coaster, that also kind of gave way to this wave of stand-up coasters, I think, because their first one was a stand-up, and they showed that they could do really innovative things. And so they were known for that in the beginning, for sure. But why did stand-up coasters all of a sudden just become irrelevant? Well, around the time that the last stand-up coaster would be built, B&M would introduce the floorless coaster, and interestingly enough, that model also became irrelevant pretty quick after a few years. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So I think with the coming of the floorless coaster, and also 2000 being such a huge turning point for the industry, I think that contributed a lot to the decline of the stand-up coaster, because so many of these had been built, and I think parks were just realizing people weren't enjoying the experience too much. These stand-up coasters are known for being not very comfortable, and I can certainly attest to that. I've ridden one up to this point, which was Mantis at Cedar Point, and it was not a very comfortable ride, despite having a decent layout, although it was very intense. But I think that contributes to the uncomfortable factor of the ride. Do I think another stand-up coaster will ever be manufactured? I certainly highly doubt it, unless something significant is done to help improve the ride experience where many people can enjoy the rides. I don't think we'll ever see another stand-up coaster, and the ones that were built, which were initially really popular, just quickly died down in popularity, and a lot of them have been removed or are now being converted to floorless coasters. And if companies like Intamin and Bolliger and Mabillard can't really effectively pull off the stand-up coaster concept, it's hard to believe that another manufacturer might be able to, as B&M and Intamin are 2 of the top tier manufacturers out there that build some of the smoothest, most technologically advanced premier rides on the market. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about the stand-up coaster. If you've ridden any, what you think of the ride experience. Why do you think they got so popular and then declined in popularity all of a sudden? And do you think we'll ever see another stand-up coaster built? I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on this topic. Let me know what other models you guys want to hear about in the future. I hope that this can be a continuing series, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video as much as I did making it. Thank you for watching. This is Coaster Daddy. Bye.